Thank you all for joining us for our SICSS-Howard Mathematica Roundtable with Mathematica, our site sponsor. Our panelists today are Alex Bohl, Sheldon Bond, and Deliya Wesley. Our moderator today is Esteban Quiñones. It is my pleasure to introduce Esteban, who will introduce our program.
Thanks so much, Nanette. On behalf of Mathematica, I want to thank you all for being part of the 2022 SICSS-Howard Mathematica. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's Career Roundtable and to serve as the moderator for this session. My name is Esteban Quiñones, and I'm an applied development economist and a researcher in the International Research Unit here at Mathematica. Since joining in 2019, I've had the pleasure of contributing to the mission of Mathematica to improve public well-being by working on projects that focus on agriculture and climate change in particular. My work in both of these areas has benefited greatly from the rapid innovations in the availability and the processing of remotely sensed data from satellites, including measures of precipitation and temperature and satellite imagery at increasingly higher levels of spatial and temporal resolution. For example, this is enabling us to model land use for different crop types based on the observed differences in reflectance by different types of crops in Niger. Another example for Mathematica's work that I would like to point out is our use of programming interfaces, Lambda function and DynamoDB, as part of our work on risk calculation algorithms, part of which are available via our Shiny app, all of which have contributed to our work on 19andMe COVID-19 risk calculator that some of my colleagues will be very familiar with today. In addition to that, I've had the opportunity to actively engage in diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, working with our DEI team to support our diversification and workforce. The types of equity research we do and how we do our work equitably in partnership with others. I'm deeply committed to work with groups and projects that intersect with social science, economics, and equity, and so excited to be here with the group as future leaders in these fields. So we want to make sure that you had a little bit of time to learn more about Mathematica, our work, our culture, and our people. For more than 50 years, Mathematica has been a trusted partner for government, philanthropy, and private sector changemakers working to improve public well-being through data and evidence. We're passionate advocates for evidence, committed to improving people's lives using the best available tools to reimagine the way that the world gathers and uses data. Our work is generally broken up across 3 distinct operating units: health, human services, and international research. But just as in many fields, we're finding more and more opportunities to increase the value we can provide to our clients by operating at the intersection of those units rather than staying siloed within them. We're 100% employee-owned and have been since the mid-1980s, which means that we take on the work we're passionate about, and that aligns with our missions and values. To help learn more about what we do here at Mathematica, we've asked a few employees, Alex Bohl, Sheldon Bond, and Deliya Wesley, to share their perspectives on their journey to Mathematica and their current work in supporting our mission. In a couple minutes, we will be breaking you up into smaller virtual groups where we'll have about 20 minutes with each of our 3 panelists. You should have received a brief video about each panelist's background prior to this session, so you can use your 20 minutes with each panelist to ask them more questions about their background, career, and/or current body of work. At our core, we're still a research organization. We also hope to learn from you in terms of the kinds of organizations that appeal to you and how organizations like ours can be shaping the evidence base around critical societal issues. To that end, during the last 30 minutes of today's roundtable, we'll come back as a large group for an open discussion that will moderate. Now I'd like to turn it back over to Nanette Coleman to get us into our small groups breakout sessions with our panelists. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Esteban. I'm excited to get folks into their rooms. So you all have the list. I can redrop that in the chat box in case you arrived on the later side and didn't see it. So our initial room assignments are Nayantara, Christina, Rebecca, Grace, and Gatumsa with Alex, Asha, Rumesa, Andrea, Amber, and Imani with Sheldon, and Erica, Susanna, Daniel, BJ, and Renee with Deliya. So you will be with them for 20 minutes. Then we'll let you know when you're meant to move to the next room. So if you're in room Deliya, you go to Alex. If you're in room Sheldon, you go to Deliya. If you're in Alex, you go to Sheldon. Okay. And if you get lost, don't worry, we'll drag you to the right room. So thank you so much from Mathematica for kicking off this panel. We did something similar last year, and it's always a highlight. So everybody, let's get to your rooms, and we'll let you know when 20 minutes is up. Go ahead and head to your rooms. Welcome back, everyone. Happy to hand the mic back to Esteban, who will be moderating our live Q&A.
Thanks so much, Nanette. I know we're tight on time, so I'm going to get right to the live Q&A for the joint Howard Mathematica 2022 SICSS Career Roundtable. Please raise your hand if you have a question so we can moderate the conversation. I know we already have one question ready to go from Regis, so I'm going to go ahead and call on him to pose his question.
Thanks, I really appreciate it. Yeah, I've in my job, I've had a few times where I've had to hire people, and I know most job descriptions are kind of a wish list. So I think it'd be great to kind of know what are those kind of 2 to 3 sort of intangibles that you're looking for when somebody's applying to Mathematica, or that you want in a typical researcher role. Those things that can't really be taught, but those things that you know you're looking for.
Thanks, Regis. I'm going to toss this one to Alex. You're still muted. Let's get you unmuted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, ask the quantitative person who's all focused on very measurable things of what the intangible things are. So a lot of times, what on the technology side, we typically want people who are passionate about the technology and the methods, because it's always a challenge. We have a nice technology set up here at Mathematica, but you end up wanting someone who's kind of a self-learner and staying abreast of, let's say, what's happening in the field, what the emerging technologies are. That's one thing I'd say it's a little bit intangible. The second thing is someone who's kind of a like they can somehow meet the intersection of data, methods, and a policy or subject matter topic. And that's not saying, for example, someone who's a generalist. I think it's someone who's applied, that really understands how all those things can come together to bring something to life, which is hard to find, because oftentimes, we're all trained to be specialists in some way, shape, or form. So those are 2 things that come to mind.
Thanks, Alex. Sheldon, do you want to weigh in there and add something for us?
Yeah, I was going to say things that strike me as an intangible are people who are client-centered and can really relate to the people involved with this particular area of research or the particular method involved. As somebody, like I said, trained to be a specialist, you oftentimes fall into the habit of letting perfect be the enemy of the good. And so you miss out on and you overlook the value of an approach that is customized toward the client need, but may not represent everything that could ultimately be done. And so understanding and showing a understanding of focusing on the person you're serving in the process of the work you're doing is a real intangible, and something that it strikes you when you hear it. You know it when somebody is more focused on the people they're serving than the actual work of service.
Thanks, Sheldon. I see that Rebecca has her hand up, so I'd like to ask her to go ahead and ask her a question.
Hi, everyone. First of all, I want to thank you all for taking your time here being with us. And so after being into several sessions, I think a lot of us are very interested in working at Mathematica after getting the degrees. So I'm gonna go ahead and ask, like, what kind of like quality you see you're looking for on the CV, that something that jumps out that you'll be like, oh, I want to give this person an interview. And then also what kind of things that on the resume that would bring a red flag that you'll be like, this is a dangerous candidate that we should stay away from it.
Thanks, Rebecca. I want to ask Deliya to field this one, and I can add some thoughts as well.
It's a great question. I'll take the last part of the question first, Rebecca, which I'm not sure that there's anything on a resume that's going to be like, no, absolutely stay away from people. I think, you know, we're very cognizant of the fact that what makes a good candidate often is the diversity of experiences they bring, and that doesn't always look the same, right? And I think depending on the position, there isn't a strict, like, you must have X, Y, and Z. I think it definitely depends on the position. I will say that, you know, from at least where I sit in the health unit and looking at sort of candidates for health equity research, or who might be able to work on the cross-disciplinary teams that address these issues, it's having a diversity of experience, right? Whether it's with methods or, you know, areas of focus, partly because our projects are so varied in terms of whether it's the health topics that we're talking about or the methods that need to be employed. Sort of there's very much a mixed methods approach to most health equity work. And so I'd be looking for somebody who could, you know, slot in to the nature of the work that's done there. And so I think, you know, it's certainly looking for the diversity of sort of focused experience, but it would never be just the resume, right? I think to the first question, it's a lot about also the intangibles, some of the soft skills, and a lot of what's not reflected on your resume. So it's never going to just be a decision based on the resume. It might be what we look at really quickly to make the decision about the next spot, but there's certainly, I think, a bigger picture in terms of identifying the right candidate beyond the resume.
Thanks, and I can certainly add to that, in that, you know, I think we're always looking for people that have that flexibility and that adaptability, combined with, you know, some demonstrated area of knowledge, right? That doesn't mean you have to be the expert, but certainly there's skills you're bringing to the table, and you can kind of demonstrate a passion and a sense of, you know, kind of productivity, right? That you have done and produced outputs in a certain area, but it's definitely not sort of a cookie cutter approach. So I'm gonna go ahead and switch to the next question and ask Asha to go ahead.
My question is related to COVID-19. Like, most of the organizations are you know, moving from office-based to remote-based, and Mathematica, like I said in one of the breakout rooms, that Mathematica is very close to my heart, so I have been keeping an eye on it, and I do see sometimes these remote positions and all. But overall, in general, I want to understand how it has affected the nature or the way you do your work after COVID. Have you moved more on remote, because you have various locations across the country?
Sure, thank you. Let me ask Sheldon if he could share a little bit about his experience in relation to that.
Yeah, so I went remote after COVID. I have 2 young children, and in order to manage their school care, needed to go remote. Plus, my wife is a principal in the Newark public school system, and so in order to manage our working schedules and school schedules, we had to go remote. Mathematica provided every support I could think of to help me make that transition and allow me to effectively maintain it through the entirety of the pandemic. And even during areas and times of political tumult, you know, Mathematica remained very aware and very cognizant of the needs, both emotional and material, of employees who were trying to manage and work through all of those different phases of our pandemic life. And so the discussion is still ongoing, even though for many people the pandemic has sort of abated and we are returning to some sense of normalcy. Mathematica is still looking for and actively discussing among senior leadership ways to ensure that people still have the support they need. I am still a remote worker, and because of the needs of my family, will probably remain that way for a little while longer, and I don't feel any anxiety over whether Mathematica will provide the supports I need to effectively maintain that balance.
Thanks, Sheldon. Just given how little time we have, I want to jump in and say that certainly I, work from the Chicago office, but mostly from home these days, and I appreciate the flexibility that the organization provides me. So I want to make sure that we go to one last question. Susanna, you have your hand up, so you get the last question.
My question is, I was trained with more like, sociological methods, like, multivariate regression and that sort of thing. But until this institute, I didn't know like about machine learning, all these more like data science methods. So I was wondering if you think that's something that if we are interested in Mathematica, that is something that we need to get skilled, so that we are more appealing as a job candidate.
Thanks. Alex, can you take that one?
Yeah, it's a nice to have, but definitely not a need to have. We have a lot of staff who have your background, and in fact, that's probably our bread and butter. We're always looking, despite whatever predictions we made, those econometric methods, social science methods are not going away. And I also think that they serve as a building block for machine learning or learning other things. So you're typically working on a team here. So we're not looking for everyone to have everything. We have data scientists who are very specialized. So you can either, if you're using that in your project, you can consult with them. So from a Mathematica perspective, I don't think it's a prerequisite by any means.
Thanks, and I can add that that's definitely true, whether it be method or discipline, type of data, things of that sort. So thanks so much. I want to hand it back to Nanette, since we're just slightly over time.
Thank you all so much for joining us. We deeply appreciate the now 3-year investment of Mathematica. As many of you know, we canceled our first year due to COVID-19, and they have been a steadfast and deeply committed partner. I would be remiss if I did not in particular thank Akira Bell, who is on this session with us. This would not be possible specifically without her. The architecture is built by her and Calvin. The vision that they had in helping to bring this to fruition is so notable. Thank you all for watching. For more information on SICSS-Howard Mathematica, visit our website, follow us on social media, and join our email list.